Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vester podcast, where we have honest conversations about the challenges women face as we navigate life, career, leadership, and identity. I'm Erica Lucas, your host for today. Let's get started. What would change if you believed there were more possibilities available to you than you currently allow yourself to see? This was a topic of conversation at our last Vest session, because one thing we've noticed throughout the years, not just within our own community, but honestly among women everywhere, is how easy it is to inherit a definition of success instead of consciously choosing one. So many of us operate from scripts we didn't write ourselves. Scripts around achievement, stability, leadership, productivity, professionalism, and even identity. And sometimes we become so confused on meeting expectations, surviving, or proving ourselves that we stop imagining beyond the role we currently occupy. Not because we lack ambition or ability, but because we've been conditioned to believe that certain paths are safer, or more respectable, or more realistic than others. And right now, this pressure feels even more intense because there's so much messaging telling women they need to constantly adapt, optimize, reinvent themselves, learn AI, don't work from home or you'll lose visibility, stay relevant, keep up. All of this or risk being left behind. Tressie McMillan Cotton recently wrote about this tension in Conversations around the end of the girl boss era, and how women are once again being pushed to reshape themselves for the next economic shift, AI. And while there's truth to the fact that work is rapidly changing, I also think many women are simply exhausted by the constant feeling that they're perpetually behind. Like, no matter how much you accomplish, there's always going to be another thing you should be doing to future-proof yourself. Another certification, another strategy, another version of yourself that you're supposed to become. But maybe that expansion isn't supposed to come from panic. Maybe it comes from permission. Permission to evolve intentionally instead of reactively. Permission to redefine success for yourself. Permission to stop shrinking yourself to fit a role that no longer aligns with who you're becoming. One of the first exercises we did during our session was called Name the Autopilot, because so much of our professional life operates on autopilot. We absorb messages from our family, workplaces, cultures, industries, and now even social media about what success should look like. And for some people, success means stability. For others, it might mean prestige, a title, a salary, being indispensable, being busy, admired, needed. Those definitions aren't necessarily wrong, but I think the important question is, did you consciously choose them or did you inherit them? And what possibilities become invisible because of those inherited definitions? Maybe you ruled out entrepreneurship because you were thought it was unstable. Maybe you ruled out leadership because you didn't see people like yourself presented there. Maybe you ruled out rest because productivity became tied to your self-worth. Or perhaps creativity because it didn't feel practical. Maybe you stayed in environments that no longer fit because success was tied to external validation instead of alignment. I think one of the hardest things about growth is recognizing when a version of success that once served you no longer fits who you're becoming. And that can feel deeply uncomfortable, especially for women, because many of us were rewarded for being adaptable, agreeable, high-performing, dependable. We have become very good at surviving systems, very good at over-functioning, extremely good at carrying things. But survival and alignment aren't always the same thing. Another exercise we explored during our best session was around expanding the definition of opportunity. Because opportunity is often framed very narrowly. A promotion, a bigger title, a raise, more visibility, more responsibility, more efficiency. But what if opportunity could also mean freedom, flexibility, ownership, creativity, impact, rest, community, health, time, peace? What if the next level of your life doesn't necessarily look more impressive, but rather more aligned? I think many women are quietly reevaluating this right now, especially after the last several years. People are asking themselves, what kind of life do I actually want? What pace feels sustainable? What relationships matter? And what kind of work feels meaningful? And I think this matters because we live in a culture that often treats ambition as something very external and visible. But sometimes the most radical thing we can do is define success for ourselves instead of performing it for everyone else. Now, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean ambition is bad. I think ambition can be beautiful. But I do think that fear based ambition becomes exhausting. The constant pressure to prove, to keep up, to outperform, to become more efficient and avoid falling behind. I think many women are carrying that pressure while also carrying caregiving responsibilities, emotional labor, financial pressure, burnout, uncertainty, and now even AI disrupting our labor force and financial stability. Which is why I think we need a broader, healthier conversation around opportunity and expansion. Not just one of how do I achieve more, but rather what kind of life am I building? What version of myself am I becoming? What actually matters to me in this season? One of my favorite parts of the session was when we invited members to imagine beyond their current role, because titles can often become cages if we let them. Sometimes we become so identified with our current role and title that we stop seeing ourselves as multidimensional people. For example, I want you to think about this for a moment. What skills or strengths do people consistently come to you for? Do they match your current job and title? What work energizes you? What problems do you deeply care about solving? What would you explore if fear and finances weren't immediate barriers? What version of yourself are you becoming where your current role may no longer fit? And I think this last question is especially important because sometimes your current role isn't failing you. You're simply becoming someone larger than the role you currently hold. And that realization can bring both excitement and grief because growth often requires releasing identities that once made us feel safe. But I also think there's something powerful about allowing yourself to imagine expansively again, not recklessly, not impulsively, not out of hype, but honestly. Maybe your future isn't a linear career ladder. Maybe it's a portfolio career, combined of consulting, entrepreneurship, creative work, leadership, community building, advising, investing, advocacy, teaching, and rest. A portfolio career made up of a combination of things. Maybe expansion isn't becoming more impressive, but rather becoming more fully yourself. And the good news about all of this is that expansion doesn't necessarily require blowing your entire life tomorrow. It can start very small, reaching out to someone else in your industry, applying for something intimidating, sharing your ideas publicly, exploring consulting, writing a book, setting boundaries, resting without guilt, giving yourself permission to want something different. Small expansions matter because they interrupt the autopilot. They create movement, perspective, and possibility. And this is also why community matters so much, because it's difficult to imagine new possibilities when you're isolated. One of the most powerful things about networks like Best is not just access to opportunity and access to a wider network. It's exposure to different ways of living, leading, building, and defining success. Sometimes we need to see someone else doing something differently before we allow ourselves to believe that it's also available to us. So, as you leave this episode, I want you to sit with this question again. What would change if you believe there were more possibilities available to you than you currently allow yourself to see? Not what the world expects from you, not what looks impressive online or on your LinkedIn profile, not what fear tells you is safest, but what actually feels aligned with who you're becoming right now. Because the goal isn't to become someone completely different, but rather to stop shrinking yourself to fit the definitions that no longer align with your life, your values, or your future. You never know, there may be more available to you than you've allowed yourself to imagine. And maybe this season is about giving yourself permission to see it. If you enjoy the episode, share with a friend and don't forget to leave us a review. And if you're ready to take your career to the next level, apply to join our community of women eager to help you get there and stay there. Go to www.besther.co to learn more.